why don't we start off today, Dave, with Selena Gomez. So
Yes.
she dropped her newest album, Rare. Uh, was this her third album or something along those lines? Maybe fourth.
Third solo album. Technically, it seems the way she recognizes it more as her second album. She doesn't really count that first one, if you ask her.
Stars Dance is just not an album anyone
Nah,
recognizes.
it doesn't count. It's not readily available or anything. Now, yeah,
No.
but honestly, aptly named album because this is the first one in 4.5 years. It's been a long time for someone as famous and in the public eye as she.
Yeah, and it's funny. When you think about Selena Gomez, what comes to mind for you first?
Yeah, man. I mean, I knew about her first from, was it a Disney Channel?
Yep.
Right. I think a lot of people did.
Mhm.
And then she kind of, had that Selena Gomez in the scene music, nothing noteworthy there. And then she starts making the solo stuff. And then suddenly she's like the most followed person on Instagram for some time. I believe she's now the fifth most followed person or account on Instagram, second most followed woman. So she's gigantic. And it's kind of crazy how we got to that point. I'm still not really sure how that happened. I think a part of it probably has to do with the Bieber effect.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I kind of think about that, the high profile relationships and the kind of always being in the mix as far as pop stars go. That's what I think of.
Yeah, that's what I think of too. And for someone that's reached her level of fame to really not have that associated with her work, at least when you first think of it, is kind of surprising to me. And I think when I think back to her as an artist, nothing has ever really caught me in terms of like her songs really being these huge hits that I find myself wanting to listen to or go back to. I see her as a pretty like generic pop star in a lot of ways, at least musically. And then this album came out, and I think that this is a step forward for Selena artistically. Um, I don't know if that means I'm gonna find myself revisiting Rare very much this year, but I think that there's a lot here that I think is better than her past work. How were you feeling after your first listening to Rare?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think, apart from some of those like obvious big hits, like Hands to Myself, Same Old Love in particular, I think that's a banger for sure. But it's full albums, kind of unrefined. And now with Rare, I view it as a comeback album because, again, the long layoff, she's had personal issues, medical issues, all that, coming back and delivering something that seems to be pretty focused on, I don't know, empowering oneself and moving forward, stuff like that. I think it's ultimately pretty relatable content for people that listen to this. I think it sounded pretty good, and I actually came away liking more songs than I have on her past work. So yeah, I think it's definitely her best album to date. And it was kind of interesting just looking at the track list. Like you have Julia Michaels on here a few times.
Yeah.
You even have Billie Eilish's brother Phineas starting to branch out. We're going to be seeing him all over the place in no time, I'm sure. Yeah,
a Bond song.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some cool dance pop on here. Like I like Dance Again in particular. That sounds pretty good. Yeah, it's a comeback record, and it sounds like she needed just to kind of put this out and be at peace.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you kind of heard that in the single, which is Lose You to Love Me.
Yep, her first number one hit.
Which I think is actually a pretty good song and a great ballad for her. I think she gets to show off some range, and obviously a very meaningful song for her in terms of that comeback that you mentioned. I think what also sticks out to me, some of the collaborations, certainly Kid Cudi in this final track, A Sweeter Place, really sounding like old school Cudi on this.
That's right.
And quite an inspired choice by her. Cudi himself has had his own ups and downs, in recent years. So I think having that kind of voice and of course the hums to kind of drive it home are just I thought that was very interesting, a great way to cap off the album. She also just sounds, I think, more confident in this, and it feels like she's really delving into her own personal experience to make an album rather than just kind of going with like the generic pop stuff like you talked
Sure.
about. Like a song like Hands to Myself. Sure, I'm sure there's further meaning behind it, but that's just like
Right.
it's that bubblegum pop we talk about where it gets stuck in your head, but
Yeah.
how deep is it? It's really only ankle deep. This feels like she's trying to dive into more inspiration, which is great to see.
Right. And I think the case with Selena too is she's a famous, successful pop star that does not have an amazing voice.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, she has to come through with strong songwriting.
Yep,
And this is definitely her strongest songwriting today, like we said. Just,
for
those
sure.
themes, I think, is just much more focused. And, other songs like Kind of Crazy,
Mm.
her performance on Crowded Room, you mentioned Lose You to Love Me, Dance Again. I think there's a lot more here than she's ever had before. And it's funny, A Sweeter Place with Cuddy, I like the song. Those synths, those just showed up at the end, huh? We did not. That's nothing else on the album sounds anything like this. It's kind of a
Yeah,
jarring song, but I don't mind because it's a good track.
definitely a good track, and it was added to our Nostalgia Best of 2020 playlist.
That's right.
So if you want
Follow
to check
that.
that out, go to Spotify. Any other thoughts before we move on from Rare?
Uh, Curious to see if we get more Selena content on the JB or the Weekend projects.
Hmm.
Selena was the subject of My Dear Melancholy and also Purpose and the Jack U songs. So I wonder if we're gonna get a little bit more of that. It's an interesting triangle. We'll see.
For sure. Will definitely be interesting to see. But I know we'll be hearing more from Selena